Welcome to the Biological Life Sciences channel. Today in this video we are going to see in details about the DNA replication process. As we know that the DNA is blueprint of life, DNA is required for each and every character in life. So therefore this DNA should be present in each and every organism. So when the cell divides, the DNA copy should be equally distributed to the organisms that are being formed. Okay. So therefore the parent cell which is having a particular DNA copy, for example this is a parent cell and it is having a copy of DNA. Okay. So when this cell divides, it will form two different cells. So these two different cells should have equal amount of the DNA as in the parent cell. So therefore this DNA is replicated and then transferred to the two cells equally, and then these two cells will get the genetic material in equal amount, and then the survival is ensured. So the DNA replicates in the cell cycle in S phase. Okay, so let's discuss the cell cycle first. So what is the cell cycle? Cell cycle is a series of events that a cell undergoes through its life cycle. Okay, so let's see the diagram of cell cycle first. This is the cell cycle. Here there is the presence of M phase where the mitosis of the cell is occurring or the cell division is occurring. Okay, then this is the G1 phase, then comes S phase, then there is G2 phase. So what is there in G1 phase? In G1 phase the cell starts to grow. Okay, once the cell grows in size, then the energy, the cell is having lots of energy, so it goes for the synthesis of the genetic material or the copying of the genetic material. Means the DNA replication process occurs in S phase where the genetic material of the cell is replicated. After that the cell goes on to the G2 phase where the cell prepares for the cell division, and in the M phase the cell starts to divide. Okay, so the replication of genetic material takes place in S phase. Okay, so now let's see what is the principle of central dogma and where this replication stands in the principle of central dogma. So you know that the central dogma, it's a principle of gene expression that is expressed or that was given by scientist Francis Crick in 1958. Okay, what does the central dogma says? The central dogma tells us that it is the DNA at the starting which starts the replication and replicates itself to form DNA of the new organism. Then this DNA, through the process of transcription, goes to form mRNA. mRNA is messenger RNA. Okay, and now this messenger RNA will go and transfer through the process of translation and form proteins. This is how a gene is replicated. But in some cases what happens, for example viruses, the genetic material is RNA. So in such cases that RNA when this virus infects a eukaryotic cell, this RNA has to be converted first to the DNA. So there is another process that is exactly reverse to the transcription. This process is called as reverse transcription. And this process occurs in retroviruses, that is reverse transcribing viruses such as HIV, where the RNA, that is genetic material, that is RNA, single stranded RNA, is converted into cDNA, that is complementary DNA, through the enzyme reverse transcriptase, and this DNA then integrates into the host organism. So this is the basic principle that was given by Francis Crick, which tells us how the genetic expression occurs and how these processes are correlated with each other. Now let us see in details the process of replication and the constituents of replication. The process of replication is very important to a cell and it involves various steps. The first step that is involved in replication of DNA is initiation. The second step is elongation, and the third step is termination. So the process of replication occurs in these three steps, that is initiation, elongation and termination. There are two ways of replication. For example, suppose this is a circular genome of an organism E. coli. Okay, so in E. coli what happens? the replication fork is forming at a particular site. Suppose this site. This is a particular site called as ORIC site. Okay, we are going to see in details about this site in this video later. So what happens here? The helix is opened and a replicating fork is formed. The replicating fork can replicate in both directions, either in this direction or this direction. Such kind of replication is called bidirectional replication. And when the replicating fork is forming the DNA in only one direction, that is this one, then it is called as unidirectional. It is called unidirectional replication. In this series of lecture, we are going to concentrate on the DNA replication in prokaryotes. As you know that DNA replication in prokaryotes is much simpler, because prokaryotes are simpler organisms. So therefore the machinery involved in replication of the DNA in prokaryotes is very simple. So here we are going to see the replication in prokaryotes in details. The model organism that we are taking here is E. coli, that is Escherichia coli, because this organism is easily available in nature. So therefore we are taking the model organism as E. coli, and the eukaryotic replication we will be taking the model organism as yeast, and this will be taken in further lectures in this series. Okay, so now let us see in details the replication in prokaryotes. As you know already, I told you that the replication takes place through three steps. First is initiation, second is elongation, and third is termination. So the first and foremost very important thing in replication is the enzyme, that is DNA polymerase. DNA polymerase is the enzyme which actually forms the new DNA. Therefore, it is called DNA polymerase. Since here the template that is taken here is DNA only, so therefore it is also called as DNA dependent DNA polymerase. DNA dependent DNA polymerase means this enzyme will use DNA as a template and it will form the DNA. Therefore, it is called as a DNA dependent DNA polymerase. So before we go on to the details of the process of replication, let us see the comparison of DNA polymerases in E. coli. Now let's see the comparison of E. coli DNA polymerases. There are around 5 DNA polymerases in E. coli, out of which 3 are required for replication and remaining 2 are required for repair, DNA repair. So let's see the comparison of polymerase 1, 2 and 3 in details. First of all, let's see the structural gene. The structural gene for polymerase 1 is Pol A, that is Pol A codes for DNA polymerase 1, then Pol B codes for DNA polymerase 2, and Pol C, also called as DNA E protein in some cases, codes for DNA polymerase 3. The DNA polymerase 3 here is highly processive enzyme which is actually responsible for the high replication of DNA, high speed replication of DNA. Okay. Now let's see the next point, that is subunits present in the enzyme. The polymerase 1 is a single subunit enzyme, whereas polymerase 2 is 7 subunit enzyme, and polymerase 3 is a multi subunit enzyme. It is having 10 subunits. Okay. Let's see the molecular weight. Based on molecular weight, the polymerase 1 is having around 1,03,000 Daltons of molecular weight. Second is having 88,000 Daltons, and DNA polymerase 3 is 7,91,500 Daltons molecular weight. Okay. Let's see the next activity. This is the 3' to 5' polymerization. You know that the DNA strand is double helix and it is having the antipolar strands. It is having 5' to 3' one strand, and second strand is 3' to 5'. Now the polymerization always occurs in 3' to 5' direction, because the ribose sugar is having the free 3' OH group that is attached with the coming nucleotides 5' phosphate group. So the phosphodiester bond forms there. So the direction of replication is always 3' to 5'. So this activity of DNA polymerase 1 is called as 3' to 5' polymerization activity. So this activity is present in all the 3 enzymes, and the rate at which it adds the nucleotide is 16 to 20 nucleotide per second in the DNA polymerase 1, whereas it is 30 to 40 nucleotides in DNA polymerase 2, and as you know that the DNA polymerase 3 is performing the main function here, so it is having 252,000 nucleotide per second, means it is the activity of addition of new nucleotides into a straight helix or a straight strand is very high in case of DNA polymerase 3. Now let's see the next activity. It is the 3' to 5' exonuclease activity. This activity is also called as proofreading activity. What happens in this activity? When the DNA polymerase has added a certain nucleotide, say 100 to 1000 nucleotides, what it does, the DNA polymerase comes back and scans the whole strand that is formed. Okay, why it does that? It does so to check whether the addition of any faulty nucleotide is done or not. So this ensures that the nucleotide that is formed is proper nucleotide which is formed from template, means the nucleotide is complementary to the template strand and there is no faulty nucleotide added here. And this 3' to 5' exonuclease activity, that is proofreading, is present in all the three enzymes. So therefore this activity is very important. The next activity is 5' to 3' exonuclease. 5' to 3' exonuclease activity means, suppose this proofreading activity, in this proofreading activity DNA polymerase found a particular site where a faulty nucleotide is added by mistake. Okay, so what happens, this nucleotide, that is DNA polymerase 1 only, using the 3' to 5' exonuclease activity, removes that nucleotide and fills a new nucleotide at that place, and that is ligated by the enzyme called as a DNA ligase. And this activity, that is 5' to 3' exonuclease activity, is only present in DNA polymerase 1, whereas this activity is not present in DNA polymerase 2 and DNA polymerase 3 as well. Okay, so now let's see the nucleotides that are added by the polymerase before it dissociates. Means at a single go, how many nucleotide a single polymerase can add, that we are going to see. The DNA polymerase 1 here can add 3 to 200 nucleotide in a single go, whereas DNA polymerase 2, it is having around 1500 capacity, means in a single go it can add 1500 nucleotides, whereas DNA polymerase 3, it can add around 5 lakh nucleotide per second. So now this enzyme is very important enzyme, that is DNA polymerase C. So we are going to see this enzyme in details in the coming table. Since we know that the DNA polymerase 3 is a multifunctional enzyme, it is having lots of subunits. Okay, so let's see in details the subunits first. Okay, so the core enzyme of the DNA polymerase, that is only the enzyme, is having 3 subunits: alpha, beta and theta. These are the 3 subunits that forms the core enzyme. When all the subunits of this whole enzyme are combined together, it is called as a holoenzyme. Okay, so let's see first core enzyme. The core enzyme of DNA polymerase is having alpha, epsilon and theta subunits. All the 3 subunits are in dimeric form. The alpha subunit is present in 2 numbers. Its molecular weight is 1,29,900 Dalton and its function is polymerization activity, that is, this is actually going to add the new nucleotide that are being formed. Okay, the next subunit, that is epsilon, it is also present in dimeric form. The molecular weight is 27,500 and it is having 3' to 5' proofreading activity, that is, it checks the DNA and finds whether any faulty DNA or nucleotide is being added or not. The next unit is theta. It is also present in dimeric form. The molecular weight is 8,600 and it is having 5' to 3' exonuclease activity, just in case of DNA polymerase 1. But here in DNA polymerase 3, this subunit helps in 3' to 5' proofreading activity only. Now let's see the subunits of holoenzyme. The tau protein or the tau enzyme subunit, it is having 2 numbers. 71,100 is the molecular weight. It helps in stable template binding core enzyme dimerization. Means this enzyme is present in dimeric form. This one set of this enzyme is required in lagging strand and one set is required in leading strand. So therefore this helps in enzyme dimerization and stable template binding core. Then the next subunits are gamma, delta and delta dash. These 3 subunits are 1 each in number. The gamma is 47,500 Dalton in molecular weight, whereas the delta is 38,700 in molecular weight and the delta dash is 36,900 in their molecular weight. These 3 proteins are helping in clamp loader, which we are going to see in details in next, that is architecture of DNA polymerase. Okay, the next subunits are these 3, Psi, Phi and P subunit. These are all present in 1 quantity each. The molecular weight here is 16,600 for the first one, the second is 15,200 and the last one is 40,600. So all the 3 subunits here helps in interaction with the single stranded binding protein, SSB. So you know that single stranded, when the DNA is present in single stranded form, it is reactive in nature. So to stabilize that single stranded form until the double stranded form is formed with it, it binds with single stranded binding proteins, that is SSB and other proteins. So therefore these three subunit helps in interaction with SSB, which helps in stabilization of the DNA polymerase. So this DNA polymerase is the enzyme that was discovered after the discovery of the DNA polymerase 1, and the DNA polymerase 1 was first enzyme to be discovered, and it was discovered by Sir Arthur Kornberg. Therefore this DNA polymerase 1 is also sometimes called as Kornberg's enzyme. Now we are going to see in detail the architecture of the DNA polymerase 3. Now let's discuss the architecture of the DNA polymerase 3. DNA polymerase 3 is the main processive enzyme, you know. This is the architecture of DNA polymerase 3. You can see the number of proteins present here. The first and foremost protein that helps in opening of helix is DNA B protein. It is also called as helicase. It opens the helix at the ORIC site, that is 13-mer sequences rich in AT. We are going to see about the ORIC site in details. Now here you can see there is a presence of tau protein, which holds the core enzyme of DNA polymerase, that is having alpha, epsilon and beta subunit here. Here the alpha and epsilon subunit is present here, and the beta clamp is present at the end through which the DNA is synthesized. So this is the core enzyme of DNA polymerase on both sides. One will go for the leading strand and other will go for the lagging strand, okay. And in the center there is delta and delta dash clamps, which holds the new beta clamp, which will be loaded onto the lagging strand, because lagging strand the synthesis of the DNA is discontinuous one, whereas here once the DNA polymerase is loaded by the beta clamp here, the synthesis will be continuous one, as it will go on synthesizing the strand till the end. But on the lagging strand, since this synthesis is discontinuous one, the DNA polymerase core enzyme has to be added again and again through this sliding clamp, and then the DNA synthesis occurs. So this is the architecture of DNA polymerase 3. All the proteins related to this architecture is called as a holo enzyme, and there are lots more protein also when the DNA is actually synthesizing, along with the single stranded binding proteins that interacts with the DNA. So this is the architecture. Let's see the reaction of the replication here. At the starting of the replication, there will be deoxynucleotide monophosphate, means it will have a certain length, for example 10 nucleotide length, okay. So this is the DNA at the starting, okay. When the replication starts, the DNTP, deoxynucleotide triphosphate, will be added. This deoxynucleotide triphosphate may be ATP, adenine triphosphate, GTP, CTP or TTP. With the help of the enzyme DNA polymerase, the holo enzyme and all the machinery, the new nucleotide will be added, that is N+1. Earlier it was N. This new nucleotide added will become N+1. The 2-pyrophosphate in this will be removed as PPI, that is pyrophosphate, after this reaction, and the DNA is lengthened by 1 nucleotide. So thereby the DNA replication starts. This reaction tells us the reaction of addition of 1 nucleotide. This reaction is repeated again and again till the whole DNA is synthesized. Now let's see the actual process of replication. Now let's see the initiation of replication in prokaryotes. The initiation of replication starts with a very particular site. It is called ORIC site. This ORIC site is also called as origin of replication. And this is a very highly conserved site which is present in every bacteria. That is, conserved site means the sequence of this site is never different in different bacteria. It is same for everyone. So let's see the origin of replication, that is ORIC site, in details. This is the site where the actual opening of helix happens in replication. I am showing you here the only one strand, that is 5' to 3' strand of this helix. The similar strand which will be below in double helical form will have the alternate sequence or complementary sequence. Now let's discuss the origin of replication site. The origin of replication site is having a 13-mer sequence. 13-mer sequence means this is a 13 nucleotide sequence, as you can see here, GATC TN TN 4T. Okay, here the N denotes that it can be any nucleotide, ATGC, so it is represented by N, and similarly at this position also. So this is a 13 nucleotide site. Okay, so now this 13 nucleotide, these are AT rich sequence. So you know AT is having a low efficient hydrogen bonding as compared to GC, which is having a triple bond, and in AT there will be a double bond. So the A here will form a double bond with the T below in the next antiparallel strand. Okay, so this 13-mer sequence helps in the opening of helix by the helicase enzyme. So this 13-mer sequence is very important because at this position there is a AT rich region that is having very low affinity and it can be easily opened by helicase. Now downstream to that there is a presence of 4 9 base pair sequences. So here 1, 2, 3, 4 sets of 9 base pair sequences are there. This 9 base pair sequence is this which is highly conserved in bacteria. It never changes. It is TT, AT, CC, ACA. This sequence is present in 4 sets and this sequence is very important because it is recognized by DNA A protein, that is first protein of the replication complex that will be forming at this site. Okay, so DNA A protein is the first protein that recognizes this site after the helicase has opened this 13-mer sequence. This whole comprises of ORIC site. Now the DNA A protein, the first protein of the replication complex, binds at this position, which will be followed by the binding of the next different subunits. There are different subunits, at least 9 different subunits are there that binds at the start of the replication at this site. So let's see the different subunits in details and their roles. Now we are going to see the units and roles of different subunits that binds at the origin of replication, that is ORIC site that we saw. Here the first protein is DNA A protein. The number of subunit is only 1. It binds at the recognition site, that is ORIC site, at the 9 base pairs, that is in 4 sets. Okay. Then there is DNA B, that is helicase. It's present in 6 copies and this helps in unwinding of DNA. The next subunit is DNA C, present in 1 copy. It is required for binding of DNA B at origin. Means C helps in binding of DNA B protein. Now the HU protein, this stimulates the initiation and helps in formation of initiation complex. The remaining subunit, that is RNA primase, that is DNA G protein, it is present in 1 quantity and it helps in synthesis of the RNA primer. You know that when the DNA is synthesized, it requires a free 3' hydroxyl group. Now this free 3' hydroxyl group should be present at the starting only. So normally this is not present in the DNA when it is replicated. So first of all, the primer has to be synthesized. The primer is extended by the DNA polymerase enzyme and the whole strand is formed. Afterwards, this RNA primer, this will form a RNA primer. Okay. So this RNA primer is degraded later by the DNA polymerase 1 enzyme by its exonuclease activity and it adds the new nucleotide and seals the gap. Okay. So this is the role of RNA primase, that is DNA G protein. The next is SSB, single stranded binding protein. It helps, these are present in 4 in single set. Eka set, one set there is a 4 nucleotide present here and this helps in binding to the single stranded DNA. Since single stranded DNA is reactive one, so it has to be binded at this position. Okay. Now let's see the RNAs or DNAs. This helps in breaking of DNA RNA hybrid. Now when this RNA primase forms a primer and the strand is synthesized, so after the synthesis of the strand, this RNA has to be removed and this RNA is removed by either RNase or DNase enzyme that breaks the DNA RNA hybrid. Okay. Now let's see the DNA gyrase. This is also present as topoisomerase, DNA topoisomerase. Now when the helix is broken, you know, when the string is opened, then it creates the tension on both the ends of the string. So here also in case of DNA, when the helix is opened, the helix is stretched, there is a creation of strain on both the sides of the helix and this is released by the DNA gyrase enzyme. This does so by cutting one of the strand which relieves the tension. So it helps in relieving the torsion strain in the DNA helix that is formed and helps in the easy conduction of the replication. Then there is a next subunit, that is DAM methylase. This helps in methylating the DNA sequences at 5' end, that is GATC sequence. The main function of this is the timing of replication. How to time the replication and when the replication has to be started is decided by this DAM methylase enzyme. So first of all, what will happen at initiation site? First, there is a binding of DNA A protein that first recognizes the 9 base pair 4 set sequences. Okay. After its recognition, it adds the DNA B protein, that is helicase. This protein helps in unwinding of DNA at the 13-mer site, that is 13-mer sequences that is shown to you earlier. Now the DNA is unwinded at this position. Then there is a binding of DNA C protein. Now HU protein binds. This helps in stimulation of the formation of initiation complex. Afterwards, there is a binding of DNA gyrase enzyme. Since the helix is opened, there is a torsion created. So this DNA gyrase enzyme helps in removing the torsion strain in the DNA helix. And after that, RNA primase, that is DNA G protein, single stranded binding proteins. Since the helix is opened, this has to be bind at this position, and then DAM methylase, all this subunit binds at that position, and the replication starts by these by addition of these all the different roles. Okay, now we are going to see the initiation fork and how the addition takes place at the initiation fork. Let's see the replicating fork now. The replicating fork looks like this on one side. On bidirectional side, it will be same below also. We are going to see the unidirectional side here, one side. So you can see the DNA helix is opened here at this position, and the DNA helix will be opened by helicase enzyme, and there is a binding of single stranded binding proteins to the single strand that is formed at this position. Okay, one strand will be leading strand. As you know, the strands are anti-parallel. The site or synthesis of the DNA strand occurs in 3' to 5' direction, means the synthesis direction is like this. Okay, so here you can see the first of all primase enzyme, RNA primase enzyme synthesizes the primer first, and it provides the free 3' OH group. This free 3' OH group is extended by the DNA polymerase 3 that is present on the lagging strand, and the synthesis here will be continuous one because it is having the ideal direction, that is 3' to 5'. So this synthesis goes on till the end of the replication, whereas the same condition is not there on the lagging strand. The lagging strand is discontinuous one, synthesis is discontinuous, and this is forming different fragments, and this was discovered first time by scientist Reiji Okazaki, that the synthesis on the lagging strand is discontinuous one because the direction of the replication here is different. You can see here the direction is in the opposite manner is 5' to 3', means the synthesis of the strand will take place like this. So it has to be discontinuous one. First, in advance, the RNA primase enzyme will form the primer, and the free 3' OH group is extended by the DNA polymerase 3 enzyme, and a stretch of newly synthesized DNA is formed here. Similarly, in advance also here you can see the new primer is synthesized, and then DNA polymerase 3 synthesizes the new fragment. Now this happens in discontinuous manner, and this RNA DNA hybrid that is synthesized at every fragment is removed afterwards by the enzyme that is DNA polymerase 1. We know that the DNA polymerase 1 is also having 5' to 3' exonuclease activity. Using this activity, the DNA polymerase 1 removes the RNA primer here and adds the new DNA here at every position and at this position also. And this nick that is created here at different places, that is gap there, is sealed by the DNA ligase enzyme. Thereby, the new DNA strands are synthesized completely in this manner. Now we are going to see in details the elongation process and how the elongation process occurs.
Let us now see the elongation in replication. It includes two distinct phases related to each other, that is leading strand and lagging strand synthesis. The leading strand synthesis is more straightforward, begins with the synthesis of primase only once. The DNA synthesis here proceeds in 3' to 5' direction. The primer is synthesized of about 10 to 16 nucleotide at the replication origin on the leading strand only once. You can see here on the leading strand the primer is only once synthesized and the synthesis keeps on going on. Okay. To this primer, DNA polymerase 3 adds the nucleotide to free 3' hydroxyl group. But the things are a bit difficult for lagging strand synthesis as the template strand is anti-parallel here. You can see on the lagging strand, the direction of the replication is anti-parallel. Due to this, what will happen? First of all, the primer is synthesized in advance and then the replication occurs, and then again this same process is repeated again and again. So here the DNA polymerase keeps on dissociating and new DNA polymerase is required for each primer as well as the strand synthesis. So the synthesis of the DNA is a bit difficult on the lagging strand. Therefore, the synthesis occurs in discontinuous manner, and this was first time discovered by scientist Reiji Okazaki in 1960. Hence, the fragments are also called as Okazaki fragment. You can see the green color primer is here, and the red color DNA is synthesized in a discontinuous manner. The leading strand synthesis proceeds in the opposite direction of the replicating fork. Okazaki fragments can range from few hundred base pairs to 1000 base pairs. The complexity lies in the coordination of the synthesis of both strands. As you can see here, the whole complex machinery, that is DNA polymerase 3 holoenzyme and the core enzyme assembly, is newly added to the sliding clamp for the replication of next fragment in case of lagging strand. The DNA polymerase enzyme is added at the center and it is loaded onto the lagging side position, and the strand is synthesized in a discontinuous manner, and the DNA B protein, that is helicase protein, keeps on unwinding the DNA, and this process continuously takes place. You can see the primer synthesized, and afterwards when the process is completed, the synthesis is halted and the primers are removed by using the RNA DNA hybrid breaking enzyme, that is RNase H enzyme, and the RNA DNA hybrid is broken down and the places are again filled with the DNA polymerase 1 enzyme, which adds the new nucleotide and seals the gap formed on the lagging fragment, that is lagging strand, that is Okazaki fragment strand is filled due to this, and thereby the elongation process takes place until the termination signal is reached onto the strand.
Now let's see how the termination occurs in replication of prokaryotic genome. The replicating fork, when it goes on, replication goes on, it encounters a sequence called as a TER sequence. This TER sequence is a 20 base pair sequence that acts as a trap for replicating fork. Why it acts as a trap? Because it arrests the replicating fork at that position. How it does that? It does that by binding of TUS protein. Now this TUS protein is very specific to the TER sequence. What does this protein does? This protein goes and binds at the TER sequence which is encountered in the genome or DNA. Okay, so generally in case of unidirectional replication, the DNA is replicated and terminated when the helix ends. Okay, but in case of bidirectional replication, this TER sequence plays a very important role. The TUS protein binds at this TER sequence. The bidirectional replication you can see here. Suppose this is the circular DNA, or the DNA is circular in certain bacteria. It will form a replicating fork like this, and here below also like this. And this is the circular DNA. Okay. Now this fork will keep on going like this, and here also it will be like this. Okay. So once a while at certain position, these two forks are going to collide with each other. Otherwise, there is a presence of TER sequence on one of the sides. So it depends on what replicating or which one of the two replicating fork encounters the TER sequence first. Okay, as soon as it encounters the TER sequence, the TUS protein that is present in cytoplasm will bind at this position. Suppose this replicating fork comes first at this position, so this replicating fork will be arrested at this position. It will not go on synthesizing the DNA here. It will be stopped at this position because of the formation of TER-TUS complex. Okay, so the replicating fork will be halted at this position. Now the next replicating fork, which will come and which will go on, will come at this position and collide with the first one. Okay, thereby the affinity of the whole subunits that is binded at this position will be released, and all the subunits will be released, and the TER sequence required to prevent the now the whole assembly is released here. What may happen here? This replicating fork can still bind at this position and go on replicating the DNA, over replicating the DNA. So therefore this TER sequence is very important, as it will halt the first replicating fork, and second replicating fork will collide at the same position, thereby ending the replication. So this is how the process of replication occurs in eukaryotes. If you like the video, just click the like button, share, comment and subscribe. You can ask the questions in comment, or you can also mail to the channel. Thank you so much for watching.